Hello, very good evening to all of you. Today we are going to see an academic task 1. And this task 1 is a line graph. We have a line graph here, and this represents the number of tourists visiting a particular Caribbean island between 2010 and 2017. And this is said in millions. I have not marked it. It's said in millions. So between 2010 and 2017, how many tourists visited this Caribbean island and stayed? Visitors which stayed on the island and visitors which stayed on the cruise ship. We have two things here. The red line represents the number of tourists who stayed on the island, and it was on the higher side till the mid of 2015. You can see after 2015, you can see the more visitors stayed in the cruise ships rather than staying on the island. Now let's go ahead and see the specialities here. What we can see here is two time frames, that is 2010 to 2017. You can say 2010, 2011, 13, 14, 15, 16, 2017. And this is a movement chart. And on this axis, you have the vertical axis shown as the number of visitors in millions. And we have the green dotted line graph represents the total number of visitors to the island, either by cruise or whether they stayed in the ship. How many tourists visited the island? Now the red line shows the number of visitors stayed on island. The dotted red represents the visitors staying on the cruise ships. So if you see that a total of 1 million visitors there in the island, you can say that is this plus this equal to 1. So you can say this plus this equal to 1.5. So we have the total number of visitors. Some of the visitors stayed on the island, some of the visitors stayed on the cruise ship. And this is what the difference is. When we go further and see here, from this point, from 1 million, the number grew to 3.5 million in just 7 years. You can say all through the years from 2010 to the mid of 2015, the number of visitors, more number of visitors were there who stayed on the island. And from the mid 2015, you can see this graph, the number who stayed on the ships were more than the number who stayed in the island. And this is what the picture is, the explanation is. So we have to see the introduction. That's a rephrasement of this thing, and the overview. You can see that there is an increase despite fluctuations, and that's what our overview is. So let's go formally. What exactly is the introduction and overview of this particular line graph? The changes in the pattern of visit to a Caribbean island between 2010 and 2017 are depicted in the given line graph. What you can see is that the changes in the pattern of visit to the Caribbean island. Overall, there was an increase in the aggregate number of visitors to the island over the period, despite some fluctuations in between. Now, some fluctuations were there in between. Despite those fluctuations, you can see there was an increase in the aggregate number of visitors. The total number of visitors increased despite amidst of some of the fluctuations, what we can see there. So we have seen the introduction and we have seen the overview too. Now we have to see that there are two specific paragraphs here. The first specific paragraph says this. As per the chart, it means as per the line graph, of the total 1 million visitors, most prefer to stay on the island in 2010. You can say out of the total 1 million, most of them would like, they'd like to stay on the island rather than on the ships. When around 800,000 prefer to visit the island, the rest stayed on the cruise ship. You can say that around 800,000 stayed on the island, but the rest stayed on the cruise ship here. Despite an increase of about 250,000 cruise ship visitors in 2011, the number fell back to the same as in 2010. You can see that there is an increase in the number of, there is an increase in the number of visitors by cruise. Within a year, it fell back. On the other hand, there were around 1.3 million island visitors in 2012. You can say that 1.3 million island visitors. When it fell back to 250,000 visitors in 2012, the number of island visitors swelled up to 1.3 million, and this is what you can see here. Now, from that point up to this point, we have seen, from this point to this point. And what is happening next? And this is my question. When we see the next particular paragraph, a converging pattern is seen in the number of visits since 2012 until the middle of 2015, when both types of visits recorded 1.4 million visitors. Converging pattern since then, you can say since 2002, a converging pattern is seen. So it's becoming closer, and the mid 2015, it was around 1.4 million. This is what both number of visitors. Then after, the attendance to the cruise ship increased steadily and to hit an all-time high of 2 million in 2017, which was 500,000 more than the number of tourists to the island. Now we have to say the attendance to the cruise ship increased steadily to hit an all-time high of 2 million. And this is over 500,000, where the visitors to the island were around 1.5 million. 2 million cruise ship visitors, 2 plus 1.5, 3.5 million. That's the total number of visitors there. And this is what we can see here, the converging pattern. After 2012, we could see a converging pattern in the number of visitors till the middle of 2015. Both number of visitors recorded 1.4 million. Then after, the attendance to the cruise ship increased steadily to hit an all-time high of 2. That's the highest point in 2017, which was 500,000 more than the number of tourists to the island. So we have picked up the specific, the most important matters, the data from the picture, and we have presented it in two specific paragraphs. The first specific paragraph, the second specific paragraph. And that's what the end of the explanation is. Let's look at the picture once again. So this is the thing. So what we have missed is the denomination. What you can say, this 0.5, 1.5, these are all million number of visitors who visited there. Thank you.